Silence, as my website says, really does teach me who I am. And this
Right.
practice, a lot of things spawned from it that didn't exist and were not even on the radar. So the idea of writing a book was not on the radar. The idea of creating my own website was not on the radar. And some of the things I do, jumping on podcasts like this, or some of the one-on-one coaching I do, kind of all came from the silence and sitting with God and then listening to these inner nudges.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Okay, everybody. So, what if I told you that 1 minute could change your entire life? Not 1 minute of frantic productivity, not 1 minute of scrolling, but 1 minute of absolute silence with God. Our guest today couldn't last that long when he started. Rich Lewis, author of Sitting with God, began his journey in 2013, forcing himself to sit in silence, testing his limits 1 minute at a time. And then, fast forward to 2025, he's been practicing centering prayer daily for over 11 years. And this book is all about what he's learned and his philosophies and so much more. So, without further ado, I'm so excited to welcome you on. Rich, welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to our conversation.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. First, yeah, I think this is going to be a really good one. I think first, though, we should talk about yourself and kind of what led you to writing. And I gave a little bit of an intro there about trying to, sit down for a whole minute. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? I mean, you said you could barely sit in silence for 1 minute long, but walk us through what those first attempts felt like and what kept you coming back despite that difficulty.
Sure, sure. And that was more before I discovered centering prayer. I started practicing centering prayer in um, I guess on a very consistent basis around June of 2014. But prior to that, I had read a lot of different books and had learned that silence is powerful. So I would kind of force myself to sit in silence, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of stumbling. So that made it hard. I didn't know what I was doing until I came across in late 2013 a book called Healing the Divide, Recovering Christianity's Mystic Roots by Amos Smith. And in this book, he talked about a practice he had been doing for actually 20 years called centering prayer, which was his method of or practice of sitting in the silence with God. So that immediately intrigued me, and I began learning more about the practice, trying it for myself, and then I even reached out to him, and we began a back and forth dialogue, and we're really friends to this day. So essentially, I didn't have a practice. I didn't know how to sit in the silence, and then centering prayer resonated with me, and it stuck. And the practice helped me sit in silence with God, and it made it easy. It made it easier, and it stuck. So I think if I hadn't found a practice, then I probably wouldn't be sitting in silence.
Understood. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really cool to know that you kind of kept up with it and you also had that guiding light. Would you mind just repeating his name again? The author who inspired you.
His name is Amos Smith, and then
Okay.
he served like I began working with him. So initially, we began a back and forth email dialogue. We became friends, and I started working initially off of his website with him. And then he actually is the one that challenged me to write a book. He had written that book, and then he was in the midst of writing his second book, and he thought I should write a book just for kind of everyday people that work and go into an office. So I took him up on that challenge, and he really actually served as a mentor to help me write the book and help me kind of learn the kind of the publishing field and the editing field, and he just served as a great mentor.
Right. Well, that's really cool. I think a lot of authors understand writing as a solitary task. I think it's something that they sit down alone and they type. And that's it. But when you have somebody as a guiding force, a mentor, like you just mentioned, I mean, that just helps improve your writing and it gives you an ear to talk to about your writing. So, if you don't mind it, it's not one of my questions that I have prepared, but I'm curious to know how that process worked. Was it very collaborative where you sent in like a chapter whenever it was ready, or was it more of an overview of, just direct support whenever you needed it? How did that collaboration work?
So I remember him saying, "You ought to write a book." And then I kind of asked him, how does that work? And he initially told me to write down kind of single sentence statements that talked about how I felt about centering prayer and some of our dialogue we had back and forth. So I did that. And then he emailed me back and said, okay, those are the chapters. And he said, go write the book. So initially I thought he was crazy because I thought I had never written anything really of any substantive length of more than 5 or 6 pages in school. But I decided, okay, I'll just pick one of the topics and I'll write a chapter and I'll email it to him. And then he'll probably think this was a mistake. This gentleman doesn't know how to write. So I took a couple weeks and then I sent him back an email with the chapter. And he came back with, you have something neat here, something that makes sense. And I think you need to continue. So then at that point, I thought, maybe. So then I talked to my wife and I said, what do you think of me writing a book? And she's an entrepreneur anyhow, so she said, do it. So I did. So it was really, it's just funny how it happened. It was just Amos suggesting I write a book, Amos suggesting I write down some single sentence statements, and then Amos saying, there's the chapters of your book, and me thinking that's crazy. I'll send him one chapter, he'll tell me this is crazy, and then we'll both part ways, and that's not what happened.
Yeah, well, you can't go into anything with that kind of mindset, I'm sure that Buzzy would have given you some constructive feedback, not you're crazy, but no, it's really good to have that. I think that anybody listening today could definitely learn from this experience, don't be afraid to share your work with other people because it's only going to benefit at the end of the day.
Then at once, when I decided, you know what, I think I can do this. I wrote a chapter. I think I can do this. I decided I needed to be serious about this and I needed to discipline myself. And I didn't want to take time away from my wife and the kids. So I actually wrote the book mostly on Saturday mornings at the local Starbucks. And this was all pre-COVID. So I actually got up at like about 5 o'clock in the morning, headed over to the local Starbucks because they opened that early. And I would write for about 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours, and then come home, and then I could continue, the rest of the day with the family because they were just getting up at that point anyhow. So that's most of the book. It got written in that manner at the local Starbucks very early in the morning on Saturdays. And there were other instances where I was able to sneak away to the Starbucks or other coffee shops and write. So a lot of the writing got done Saturday mornings, and then in some instances when I could sneak away and not take time away from the family. But that's really how the book got written.
Well, thank you for walking through the process. I was going to get into like more of that, process-wise stuff later on, but this is really important that we're touching upon it now because it's what authors really want to hear in a practical sense. People say, I don't have time to write, or my house is too noisy, or when am I going to do this? But you are a prime example. Get up early, go to Starbucks, get a cup of coffee while you're there, get comfortable. And, by the time you're done writing for 4 hours, well, what would that be, like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. when your family's getting ready? So there you go. And you've already had pretty much a whole section of your day, under the belt before you even start. I love that idea. For me, I would have a hard time probably, actually getting up out of bed that early. But if you're able to make it happen, whether you're, morning person or night owl, I like that, Rich. It's awesome.
And I probably wouldn't do it again. Like I did write a second book, and it did not get written that early, and it was just too early. I couldn't do that again, but it worked well for that book.
You gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Second book followed a different process, but I guess the key point is you just need to discipline yourself to write however you do it, and then whenever you do it. But you just need to discipline yourself.
Right. And to stick to it too. So hey, let's segue into the book itself a little bit. I think that we got a ton of tips about process. We really need to hear this stuff. So I really like your method. But let's talk a little bit about the book itself. So one of the most striking ideas in your book is silence is God's first language. Everything else is a poor translation. So where did that come from? How did you come to understand this? And what does it mean for people who are used to verbal communication?
Yeah, I guess as I began practicing centering prayer and sitting in silence with God, as my website says, the website is Silence Teaches. Silence kind of taught me and silence continues to teach me. So when I sit in silence during centering prayer, we're letting God, we think of it as silent prayer, where we're sitting with God and we're opening to the presence and actions of God within. And God's praying in us what God knows we need, whether it's inner peace or calm or wisdom for tasks or nudges to do things. Or even in my case, probably an insight for what should I be typing in this book, sitting with God that I'm in the midst of writing. So at least I began discovering and continue to discover that silence, as my website says, really does teach me who I am. And this practice, a lot of things spawned from it that didn't exist and were not even on the radar. So the idea of writing a book was not on the radar. The idea of creating my own website was not on the radar. And some of the things I do, jumping on podcasts like this, or some of the one-on-one coaching I do, kind of all came from the silence and sitting with God and then listening to these inner nudges.
Understood. Right. So I guess that's kind of how you have to do it. You can't really hear those inner nudges unless your mind is just focused on it. Is that what you would call the beginner's mind then? Is that like that first part when you're trying to silence everything out? Or is that something that you adapt and learn throughout time, that beginner's mind that you have to maintain?
I guess they work together, really. I think of it as I'm a beginner, I'm work in progress, and that's why I continuously return to the silence because it continues to teach me who I am. And I just come to the beginner's mind and open to what will be shared in the silence itself. So rather than coming with my own expectations and what I want, I let go of everything and come and open to what in the silence, what does God want me to do today? What does God want me to do in the future? That's what I mean by, I guess, a beginner's mind is we're just letting go and trusting God.
Right. Yeah, I guess what you have to do at the end of the day is to keep that trust going.
Right.
Um, yeah. So now that this book is out, that I'm curious, it's out and people are learning from it and being influenced by it. What else have you been working on in the meantime that people, if they're really inspired by what you're doing here, do you have a certain website or class or something people to learn a little bit more about?
Sure. So I guess a couple things. One, I kind of collaborate with another gentleman, Brian Russell. We do a monthly centering prayer gathering. It's free. It's usually on the third Saturday of each month, and we'll give a short talk. We'll do a sit with everyone for 20 minutes, and the last part of the hour, 20 minutes or so of the hour, we just answer questions or test people just want to share. So that's one thing is it's just kind of a free gathering for anyone that wants to meet with other people that like the idea of sitting in silence. So that's definitely one thing I do. Obviously, I go on a lot of different podcasts just to share the book and to share the practice in case people listen and hear and think maybe I should try this practice. Maybe it has a way of helping me and healing me. And then on my website, I offer for those that kind of want help with it. I do offer one-on-one coaching to help people establish a centering prayer practice and then kind of maintain it so that it's not they start it and then they establish hopefully a long-term sustainable practice.
Understood. That's really cool that you have that then, a safe space for people to, well, going back to the first thing you mentioned, a safe place for people to, be quiet and kind of practice their own, um, time with God in that space. I think it's interesting because in your book, you actually emphasize that. You say it's a personal and unique journey, that's the process of centering prayer. So it's cool to think that you can go meet up, but you can also have your own personal experience at the same time. So it's really awesome, but that must be interesting then. How do you offer guidance while honoring each person's unique path?
So it's part of coaching or just as part of this monthly gathering that we
I
do?
guess both, right? I guess both go hand in hand, right?
So repeat the question one more time.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, being that it's such a unique process for everybody, it's personal to everybody. How do you offer guidance while also honoring that person's unique path if it's so personalized?
I would say mostly listening. I mean, it is unique for each person's path. It is unique, and God comes to them in the silence and kind of prays in them what that person needs. So I think the most important thing to do is just to listen and ask questions. So, but a lot of listening, and then a lot of maybe asking questions or reacting to what someone said. Because yeah, each person's path is unique. So one person's experiencing is going to be very different from what another person experiences.
Understood. And I can tell that you are a very good listener. I mean, you pick up on things from others and you implement it into your own work. I mean, that's where your mentorship came from, right? And also, you're always quoting different mystics in your book as well. You have Zen teachers, like, and I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but Shinaru Suzuki, alongside some others. So really cool that you pull different quotes from them and put them into your book. What was that process like for choosing the best quotes to throw in there?
Um, Some of it was just I just like to read. So if I read, I thought, oh, I might need to stick this in my book somewhere. So as I would read something, I would just save it in my iPad in the notes section, just in case I wanted to wrap it into my Saturday morning writing sessions. So a lot of stuff landed in the book simply because I like to read. I would save it, and then I would go back to my iPad as I was writing just to see what belonged in the book and what didn't belong, but what maybe should go into the book.
Understood. Right. Well, hey, I think, whatever it was, you did pick the right combination because you definitely have a great comprehensive guide now with the help of those quotes and those influences. So really cool. Oh, one of the lines I have written down here, centering prayers on an escape from this world, but rather prepares me to engage and fully live in this world. So can you share us an example of this? Like, maybe one of the first moments when you actually, accomplished it. What was it like, and how did it help you engage in daily life?
I would say on a daily basis, quite frankly, because the first thing I do before I begin my day is a centering prayer silent sit. So I think of it as that's my restart button, my reset button. I'm sitting with God, and then I'm getting up from my silent sit and moving throughout the day and partnering with God. So really, my morning sit really helps me begin the day. And then I usually take a second sit early in the afternoon, and it's kind of the interior reservoir runs dry, or my energy maybe is drained and I need another reset, another restart. So I guess these silent sits really have a way of just kind of reconnecting me to God, re-energizing me, nourishing my soul so that I can finish the second part of the day as strongly as I finish the first part of the day. That's really what I mean by that is these sits just have a way of nourishing my soul so that it's not me, it's me and God partnering the entire day. I'm sitting with God, and then it's not, I'll see you at the next sit, God. It's no, God's coming with me during the day and continues to come with me, but we're sitting together, then we're walking and partnering together.
I like that. And you think about it in both ways. Like, you're either sitting or you're walking. It's almost like you're, hanging out with a friend in a way, right? It must feel like kind of conversational, like, even though it's silent, but you're communicating and feeling at peace, I guess. It's hard to describe, I'm sure, but you do a great job of talking about it in the book. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, and if you think about sitting in silence, it's no different than, if you have long-term friends or a lover or a spouse or some significant other, a lot of times you don't even need to talk. You just like being with each other. You can sit together, you can take a walk together, or you can sit together, and sometimes words aren't needed. It's the same thing. We're sitting with God. We don't really always need words. We're just sitting together, two friends that like each other and love each other.
Right. Yeah. It's all you really need. And I guess that kind of just helps add to that peacefulness and the simplicity behind it all, which, by the way, is actually something that a lot of your reviews say is a very simplistic book. You put things out in a very simple way to make sure people understand it well. Do you have a certain strategy for making everything, very laid out and clear and simple when you were writing?
I think I don't know. I think that's just naturally the way I am. I
Oh,
tend to write in shorter sentences. They don't have to be long and complicated. And even the chapters, I purposely wrote the books. I wanted the chapters to be short, and then even within each chapter, I wanted you'd have a heading so you know what to expect, and then you could have a couple paragraphs on that topic, and then another heading, and then you simply know what to expect as you can keep reading. That's I love when I read books that are structured in that manner because I like to read in chunks. So I guess I just wanted to make it an easy book for people to read. And I didn't want to make this practice, I wanted to make it easy and understandable for people, and that it's not a complicated process.
Right. Yeah, and I guess if people do see it so simple as like just like that, they're more likely to give it a try and put it into practice. If nothing it's something scary, it's something just to, it's going to benefit you. So why not give it a try? And if somebody did, then what's like one step they should try, like right now when this podcast is over, that that can kind of get them on the right path? What would that first step be?
I would say, one, make a commitment that you're going to try a practice like this for 1 month. Then I would say make it the first thing you do in the morning before you do anything. And then just make it short, 1 to 5 minutes at the most. So just make a commitment that you're going to try it for 30 days. You're going to do it first thing in the morning. It doesn't have to be more than 1 to 5 minutes. And then at the end of the 30 days, to kind of reevaluate, how did it go? And did it resonate with me? And if it did, then continue it. And then you maybe even just begin to lengthen the amount of time you're sitting in silence to 10 minutes to 15 minutes to 20 minutes, perhaps.
Right. Baby steps, but then
Right.
gradually increasing it. Perfect.
Exactly.
So, as we begin to wrap up today, I'm curious to know. I mean, you mentioned that you actually have a second book out there. I'm a little bit curious about that one and also about any other future projects that might be on the horizon.
Sure. The publisher and I were kind of interacting back and forth, and then they kind of challenged me to write a book on, how can centering prayer help you cope with the daily news. And I love that idea because the environment is, um, it is what it is. Whether it's wars or politics or events, some of the environment can be very stressful for people. So the book I write in the second book, not only do I write about that, such as whether how war can impact people and stress people, or inflation or job losses, but I also just talk about kind of the up and downs of your life and how that can impact you, whether it's an unexpected job loss, or someone passes away, or financial loss. These are all things that impact us, and they are our daily news. So I talk about how a practice such as centering prayer can help us with your daily news, whatever it is, whether it's something you're reading on the internet, whether it's or watching on CNN, or something that's unexpected in your own life. I talk about how this type of practice can help you.
Understood. Okay, well, really exciting. And is there a certain link for us to get connected then in that case to stay up to date, get more information about that?
Sure. The best place to find me and what I'm doing is my website, silenceteaches.com. And there, if they subscribe, they'll get a free ebook on centering prayer, which is very easy to read. And then, of course, my current book is on the website. And then when the new book is out sometime in 2026, it'll also be on the site. And then, if they're interested in one-on-one coaching, I have information about that on my site. And then I have a weekly meditation that they'll receive as a subscriber. And then I have a resource page that I like to update with books and online courses and different types of things that I think can help people. And they can take a peek at that and see if there's anything on the resource page that they find attractive.
It really seems like there's something for everybody, right? Like people can look forward to the next book coming up, which by the way, love to have you back on the show and that's ready to be released. Do you have, chat about that a little bit more, spread the word.
That would be
Um,
great.
yeah, yeah. And also guys, if you're interested too, maybe a book's not your thing, but the coaching could be your thing, or the all the posts that you mentioned. It's really cool that you keep everybody up to date. So yeah, we're gonna put the links to that in the description box of this podcast today. So if you're listening or you want to know more, well, click right on over. Don't even hesitate. Just give it a try. And Rich, I'm curious to know if you happen to have any other writing tips for the audience today. Anything else that you found super useful while you were going through the writing process?
Yeah, I guess I would say, as I said, one, just discipline yourself, find a time and discipline yourself to do it. And then even the second book I wrote a little bit differently. I just kind of wrote it at 500 to 1,000 words at a time. So I decided I'm just going to write it in that manner, because then all of a sudden you have a book. So I would say, one, discipline yourself to take the time to write. So find a good time to write and discipline yourself. And then maybe even just take it 500 to 1,000 words at a time. And then even sometimes you need a break. Like there was a period of time where I wrote and then I realized I think I need a break. And I took about a 3 month break from the book because I just needed to step away from writing and not burn myself out. And then when I came back 3 months later, I guess I was more refreshed and ready to resume and finish the book. So
Mhm.
recognize when you need also to take a break so you don't burn yourself out.
Right. Yeah, because you're not going to get anything done if you're burnt out or uninspired or having writer's block or whatever it might be. So, yeah, listen to your body, listen to your mind, and take the breaks you need to.
Right.
Mindfulness, right? Or well-being. That's what you got to think about.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, Rich, this has been a really engaging conversation. I think we learned a ton about the power of silence and the power of, connecting with yourself and, all those around you through practices like this. So perfect. And again, guys, we're going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today so you can click over and learn a little bit more. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. Great questions. And yeah, I'd love to come back on and talk about the next book when it's out. So
Oh yeah, we'll be looking forward to it. That's gonna be a blast. And yeah, and to the listeners, if this conversation resonated with you, well, go ahead and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Subscribe, and most importantly, try singing in silence for just 1 minute today, right? Give it a shot. You never know where it might lead. And until next time, keep writing, keep growing, and keep pursuing your mission. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast. That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or a leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.